Cheers. Thanks, Liz. So thanks for everyone for joining us. And there'll be a couple of opportunities throughout the presentation where I do refer to that you might be able to liaise with your recruitment agent. So as Liz touched on, for any inquiries that do come in that are statement of purpose related or in addition to any COVID ones, but if there are statement of purpose questions that come up here that don't get answered or particular reference points that I talk to, you can also liaise with your recruitment agent. So first, I'd just like to cover off on what we're going to talk about today in the Writing a Good Statement of Purpose webinar. So firstly, what is a statement of purpose? Secondly, why do we ask for a statement of purpose? We're going to talk about some common visa refusal reasons, which I think helps place some context on what we're going through in relation to the first 2 points, and then also the fourth point, which is what should be included in a statement of purpose. We're going to talk about a number of actual GTE scenarios and the outcome of those scenarios and the part that the statement of purpose played with those. 6th point there, the keys to writing a good statement of purpose. What actions can you take as agents? And then also any questions that you might have as we go through the presentation. So firstly, what is a statement of purpose? So there's some points I'm just going to read through here, and there'll be some of the things throughout the presentation that I just sort of refer to, but this particular page, I'm just going to read it out for everyone. So a statement of purpose is a document that is designed to show that individual students meet the genuine temporary entrant requirements for both the University of Wollongong and the Australian government. It is intended to show independent research into a number of different areas, including why the students have selected the course they have and the value of the course to the future of the student. So as a number of you will sort of know this, but for the purposes of this presentation, we just thought it'd be important to cover off exactly what is a statement of purpose, and then in the next point, why do we ask for a statement of purpose? So there's 2 main reasons here. To assist us in determining that a student meets the genuine temporary entrant requirements. And then the second point, and the more important one, is around assisting the students in preparation for their visa application. So the main point I wanted to touch on here is that obviously from our perspective at the University of Wollongong, we want to make sure that a student meets our sort of GTE requirements, but more importantly, we want to be able to assist them in their preparation for a visa application and being successful in that visa application. So when we ask for particular information, it is not purely in the context of helping us meet our requirements. It is also thinking ahead to allow or to put the student in the best position possible to be able to achieve a positive outcome with their visa application. The next slide I'm going to go through here is around the common visa refusal reasons. So this is just a bit of awareness for everyone, and we do have sort of 3 nationalities listed there, three countries listed there. So for anyone who is on the call from other citizenships and you would like to know this particular information for your country, please liaise with your recruitment agent and we'll only be too happy to provide that information for you. But you can see there for the 3 countries listed, India, Bangladesh and Nepal, there's a number of similarities there. Lack of personal ties to home country, limited knowledge of course, and also the course will not assist applicant to gain employment in home or third country, but there's also some individual pieces that apply to various countries. So to confirm, this information has been taken off actual visa refusals that we have received over the last 2 to 5 months. So the database that we have where we have pulled this information from is fairly large, and so we're confident in sort of, I suppose, what we're showing here and what we're advising you. And so in terms of what a number of the slides that I'll go into shortly in terms of what should be included in the statement of purpose and what we look for, there's a link here between why a visa might be refused and then what is information that we are after and that we want both yourselves and then the student to be able to present to us in a statement of purpose. So next slide here is what should be included in a statement of purpose. So there's 5 main categories here. The first one is course choice. Second one is applicant circumstances. The third point is benefits of the course. Fourth point, financial capacity. And the fifth point is immigration history and visa conditions. So over the next couple of slides, what I'm going to do is go into a bit more detail for each of those 5 points. And then we've also got some actual examples of statement of positions we have received that cover off on each of those particular points. And I'll talk through the detail of why we particularly like those statement of purposes that we received and the positive impact they had on the student in receiving a clearance from us on their GTE condition. So the other point I wanted to touch on here is around the Ministerial Direction 69, which is ministerial direction that relates to how the Australian government assesses GTE. And these particular points, the reason we asked for that information to be included in our statement of purpose is that is a part of what is called the Ministerial Direction 69, which is how the Australian government assess genuine temporary entrant. So we do encourage, if you're not familiar with that document, that we encourage everyone to read it and get familiar with it. If you would like access to that, please liaise with your recruitment agents and we'll be able to forward that information out because we feel it's important that just places some further context on what is it or why are we asking the information we're asking for, but then also why the government is asking for that particular information.
And Graham, just before you go on,
yep.
I think it's important to note that our checklist that we included with our GTE screening form, so on the second page of that is a statement of purpose checklist. That checklist is based off that ministerial direction as well. So that is a really useful tool for your students to go through whilst they're writing their statement of purposes and make sure that they're covering off all of those sections where they're relevant to their circumstances. So that's been modelled off that ministerial direction, and so use that as a guide, and that will ensure that all of those points are covered.
Cheers, thanks Beth. So the first point there we're going to go into a bit more detail about is course choice. So here's the number of points that we're looking to be included under course choice. So firstly there, your reasons for choosing UOW. Second point there is your reasons for choosing your course. Third point, how this course relates to your previous study and work history. And if the proposed study is unrelated, please explain how this course will support your change in the career. What study options are available in your home country? What study options are available in countries other than Australia? And what study options are available within Australia? So one of the critical elements here, as it is in throughout all aspects of the statement of purpose, is around independent research. And you'll see here in the couple of examples that I'll go through where students have been able to articulate that they have been able to undertake some independent research, which from our perspective helps us immensely in being able to determine or get comfortable with being able to clear a GTE condition through the statement of purpose that a student has submitted. So the first example here is for a Nepalese student who is looking to study at university in mechanical engineering. And you can see there, as I touched on before, sorry, I'm not going to read out all of this because there's a bit of detail in here, but I will just cover off on particular elements within it that we liked. So in this particular example, this student made some individual comments around the career that they wanted to be able to follow. One of the examples that they spoke to was around Formula One racing and made a link between the course they were looking to undertake and the career they wanted to have. So whilst there's a little bit of content in there, that was sufficient for us to be able to be comfortable that the student undertook some independent research and that the course choice was something that was going to help them in relation to their chosen career. The second example here is for a student that was looking to go into nursing. So again, written a little bit differently, and that's one of the points here as we go through each of the points under what should be included in a statement of purpose and the two examples. So it's the same example that follows each of the different points in terms of what should be included. And what you'll find is that the statement of purpose is still written differently by each student, which I confirms that they wrote it in their own words and they undertook independent research, but also confirms that every statement of purpose doesn't need to be the same. It can very much be influenced by the student and the course they're undertaking and their background. Yeah, so I just want to cover off on that. Again, with this particular example, the student made a link between the course being undertaken and the career they were looking to be able to move into in the future. And that made us very comfortable that or satisfied with this aspect of the statement of purpose. So the second point about what should be included in a statement of purpose is applicant circumstances. So this includes your circumstances in your home country, including any personal economic ties and your knowledge of living in Australia, and including any existing ties with Australia. So again, independent research is critical here. Obviously, for most students being able to articulate that in relation to their circumstances in their home country, then they can do that fairly well and note that within their own words, but probably the critical element of the research here is to the knowledge of living in Australia. And then, as I said, noting any existing ties with Australia. So the first example here is again from the first student we touched on in the previous point. So there's a number of points there that have been sort of blanked out from a privacy perspective, but this is the student's information around their personal circumstances, and the top paragraph there refers to their personal situation and the bottom paragraph refers to circumstances in Australia. So the point here is probably this is not an overly lengthy sort of response, but from our perspective, it covered off all the aspects that it needed to. In the top paragraph, sort of talks to sort of parents and sort of income and what the parents do. And in the bottom paragraph, when they talk about Australia, refer to a number of points of different aspects of living in Australia and the cost of living in Australia. So again, from our perspective, we're very comfortable with that aspect of the statement of purpose. Now, the second example here from the sort of Nepalese student is, again, a lot of information in the first paragraph about their personal situation and a little bit more than the previous example we gave. And in this particular example, this person spoke about their extended family. And then the bottom two paragraphs talk about sort of Australia and different aspects of Australia. And whilst it was written differently to the previous example, that again, we were comfortable that the research was independent, and we were comfortable that that covered off on the aspects that was required within the statement of purpose for that particular area. So the third point talking about is the benefit of the course. So here we're looking for the student to be able to cover off on employment opportunities you could receive following completion of the course, including the details on the type of position, prospective companies, and the remuneration salary you could expect to receive here. So again, this is where research is critical in relation to this area, and a strong statement of purpose will identify positions, will identify companies, and identify expected salaries to receive for those positions. So when we see that type of information and a individual has been able to articulate strongly based on research that they've done, then that does help immensely in being able for us to be able to get comfortable with the statement of purpose, or for this area of the statement of purpose.
Graham, can I just give a tip with that one? The best way for students to show that they've done that research is to actually look at what's being advertised in the area that they want to work in. So if that's in their home country, looking at what the current jobs are that are being advertised, what those salaries are looking like for that particular position, and also what qualifications they're looking for as well. So that gives the student a chance to demonstrate that those employment opportunities are there in their home country, as well as demonstrating that they've undertaken that research, and they can outline what research they've actually conducted within that statement of purpose as well, so that they can show you know, links to the website for the job search website or something like that, and set out those the salary that they could expect to receive, what companies, what type of position, and then support that with actual advertisements that they have seen.
Cheers, thanks both. So the first example here, I think I might have mentioned a couple of slides ago, this student was Nepalese, but this student is Indian. So India is referred to in this particular response. So you can see in this response, the student has referred to jobs, salaries, locations within India, but they've been able to clearly articulate salaries expected to receive and roles that they could expect to receive post completing their studies. So again, very easy for us to be able to find a link between the course and the benefit of the course to the student in terms of what they are looking to achieve in their career. And the second example here, which is a bit longer and again written sort of differently, talks about specific roles, careers and opportunities that the student would be able to achieve post-course. So the sort of probably the top paragraph of this, this example refers to sort of probably a more general view around nursing, but then as they get further through the response, there are a lot more sort of specific about the particular roles that they would be looking to move into. And again, we're comfortable with this aspect of the statement of purpose when taking into account with all of the remaining aspects as well. So the fourth part I'm going to cover off on is financial capacity. So this is how we're looking for students to outline how you intend to finance your studies in Australia, including supporting a spouse and/or dependents if that is relevant. And the first example we've got here is very to the point. So this particular student coming here for study for 2 years, they estimate how much it will cost and they estimate how they'll fund it. Very clear, concise, covered off on what they needed to. And I'm going to cover off on this again in another couple of slides, but a statement of purpose doesn't need to be lengthy. And even when you look at individual responses, if the response answers a particular question, then it doesn't need to be lengthy. And in this particular example, we got all the information we needed to. And again, you'll find for the second student, they've written it fairly differently. So again, it's more information than the previous one, but still not a huge amount of information there. But the student goes into a lot more detail about the positions that their family members hold, the income that they receive from those assets, and then how they intend to fund the cost of the study. So a lot more information in relation to that particular example. But again, very sort of easy for us to be able to understand the student's financial capacity position overall, and then make it much easier for us to be able to reach a conclusion. The fifth point there is immigration history and visa conditions. So there's 3 points there outlining your immigration history, including any visa and travel. If you received a previous visa refusal or visa cancellation, outlining the circumstances that led to that visa refusal cancellation and how your circumstances have changed, and then outlining your knowledge of the student visa conditions. So this is where we probably would expect to see some similarities between students' responses, because here most students are just confirming different points. So the first example here, the student has advised they've never visited Australia or any other country, and hence have never applied for a visa, and that they're aware of the student conditions and procedures. And the second example, similar, they've written it slightly differently, but again, they're just confirming the conditions on the particular visa and advise us around their immigration sort of history. So probably the one point to touch on here that doesn't show in either of these examples is if the student has, sorry, I'm just going to go back a couple of slides. If they have had a previous visa refusal, outlining the circumstances that led to that refusal. So the more information we can get in relation to that, the better. And getting that information up front definitely helps us as well. So we encourage you or encourage students, if they have received previous visa refusals, to be completely upfront about that. Provide as much information that you can. We're aware that some countries aren't as forthcoming in relation to why they have have given a visa refusal, and therefore that impacts how much information a student can provide to us. But we encourage you, as said, to be open and upfront, explain what you can, and there's probably one area where we're looking for as much information and as much detail as we can to help us make an informed decision. Because just because a student has had a previous visa refusal, it definitely doesn't mean that they're not going to give an opportunity or be given an opportunity to have their GTE condition cleared.
Graham, I'd just like to add there as well, it's not just if the student's received a visa refusal, but particularly anyone in their immediate family, particularly if they're intending on having that person accompany them to Australia. So the most common scenario that we would see in that circumstance would be the student's spouse has received a visa refusal, or they've received a visa cancellation in another country or in Australia. So once again, it's really important for anyone who's particularly joining the student to in Australia to provide that information, provide the notice that they've received from that immigration department, and explain the circumstances. What we're really looking for in that regard for both the student or one of their family members is a change in circumstances. So making sure that they provide that information up front does mean that we can come to an outcome faster. Also means that if that information comes to light later, that can delay things like COEs and those kind of things, particularly when students are trying to get their visa application in. So it just allows us to consider that information up front.
Cheers, thanks, Beth. So that's all the aspects of what should be included in a statement of purpose. What we're going to talk about now is a couple of GTE scenarios. So we can see there, I'll go through a couple of high-level points, and then I'll confirm the outcome and a bit of why we got to the outcome. So in the first scenario there, an Indian citizen living in a risk region, they completed bachelor's and going into relevant master's, study gap greater than 12 months, and not married and no family onshore. So the reasons given for the study gap in this particular case was research into their course and completion of research and completion of English testing, which based on the length of the gap was not sufficient. We sought some further clarification from the student and asked them to provide a stronger statement of purpose. And whenever we do that, we look to be as specific as we can in terms of the additional information that we asked for. So we will look to say, please just respond to, in this example, additional clarity on the gap and anything else you undertook during the gap. The student did not provide any additional reasons or evidence for the study gap, and because of that, and combined with a risk region, the student was ultimately rejected. So again, in this particular example, and more generally, and this goes to my earlier point around why we asked for a statement of purpose, is that A, to help clear our GTE condition, but B, to help the student receive a positive visa outcome. And in this particular case, that knowing that information not only would have helped us, but it would have helped the student in relation to when they submitted their visa application. And so, as I said, when we ask for more information, we'll be fairly to the point about what it is we would like to be covered off on, and then you only need to respond to that particular point. And in this case, the student did not provide any further information, which led to us rejecting or not clearing the GTE condition. The second example here is a Nepalese student married with spouse accompanying them to Australia. Study gap greater than 2 years, and was looking to live in Sydney and attend the Liverpool campus. In this particular example, the student provided a strong and detailed, or provided strong SOP that included detailed information on their study gap, whilst also this included providing work experience evidence that covered the time of the study gap. The statement of purpose included points around why they're undertaking the masters, linking it to their background in terms of their career history to date, but then also providing clarity on how this would help them into the future. And so in this particular example, the GTE condition was cleared straight away. We didn't need to go back and ask the student for more information. So typically with a study gap of greater than 2 years, we more than likely will need to do that, but the student was very upfront and forthcoming in providing information about that allowed us to be able to clear the GTE condition straight away. The third example here, a Pakistani citizen that had a previous visa refusal in 2015. They had been living in the United Arab Emirates and was intending on returning there on a work visa. They had a small study gap of less than 8 months, which had been explained with particular work experience. So in this example, although the visa refusal was from 2015, we did take this into consideration as it was not initially declared on the GTE form. Although the student had advised their circumstances had changed since the previous visa refusal, but it was not initially noted on the GTE form. Further information around this student was that they did not have any family sort of on shore or spouse or children. As I touched on, the study gap was explained away with work experience. In this example where a student is living in a third country, we do look at this a little bit more closely. As in this example, the student couldn't demonstrate guaranteed commitments back in the UAE. So he was looking to return to the UAE but couldn't get permanent residency. And so that added an additional layer of risk, and ultimately the student was rejected on the basis that a number of points. Firstly, they were living in a third country with no guarantee of employment upon return to that country. This student was also not wanting to return home, and they were very, I suppose, forthcoming in advising us of that. They did just want to return to the UAE, and the history of the visa refusal. But noting that the visa refusal wasn't the specific reason it was rejected. In this particular case, there were a number of points that added up to us not being comfortable to be able to clear the GTE condition. And the fourth scenario here is for an Indian citizen doing their second master's. Spouse will accompany them to Australia, and then they did have a gap that was explained with relevant work experience. So there was one flag here that can be something we look at a bit more closely is when a student is looking to do a second master's. In this particular example, the student SOP was very strong, similar to the first scenario I think it was I spoke about. They demonstrated good research into other options of study in terms of other locations, and in Australia, how the course will a couple of slides there that what I was not referring to. So again, in this example, the student was able to articulate, even though they were undertaking a second master's, they were able to articulate the link between the second master's and what they were intending to do in their career through the statement of purpose, and that helped us clear the GTE condition. So they're all the GTE scenarios that I was looking to go through. The next point I just want to cover off on was around the keys to writing a good statement of purpose, and I suppose a bit of a summary of everything that we've spoken about. So showing independent research and outlining research that has been conducted and show evidence where relevant. So to the point that Beth was talking about earlier in relation to sort of jobs that people might be referring to, or opportunities to be able to put into the SOP. If you have any evidence that of particular jobs that you've looked at and where you found those, the students can note them in the statement of purpose. Writing the statement of purpose in your own words, and then when answering the different questions within your statement of purpose, be specific, relevant, and concise. So, I mean, all of those points are critical there. I've touched on the being concise, although not directly, when going for a number of those student responses. So a lengthy statement of purpose doesn't necessarily mean a great statement of purpose. We've seen statement of purposes that are 2 to 3 pages long, and they cover off on everything that we need to be covered off on, and we're able to improve them straight away. So yeah, a longer SOP doesn't necessarily equate automatically to, well, there's lots of information in there and we'll be able to clear the GTE condition. The further point around I suppose, the being concise and specific in a statement of purpose is that, I mean, my team read every statement of purpose that comes in. They digest all the information in there, irrespective of whether it's 2 or 3 pages or 14 or 15 pages long. So obviously if we have 14, 15 pages long statement of purposes, and that can impact our turnaround time. So the ability to be able to write specific information relating to a statement of purpose is critical and important to us, not only be able to achieve a good outcome for the student, but then also being able to help clear GTE condition and improve our turnaround times. So sorry if, looks like there's another issue there with the screen that is showing. So just give me 2 secs.
While you sort that, Graham, I just wanted to touch on the writing in your own words. I just wanted to reiterate that one as well. So when, as Graham said, our team read statement of purposes, every single statement of purpose that comes through. So the in the student's own words is really important. We can pick where students have started using templates for their statement of purpose or copied and pasted from websites. And it's also really important that it's equal to what their English language level is as well. Because if a student's scoring an IELTS on maybe like a 5 or a 5.5, but the writing and the quality of writing in their statement of purpose is indicating a writing level much higher than that, then that would be a cause for us to look into that further as well. So writing in their own words is really important, and it is quite easy to tell when a student is taking that information from another source, and sort of in that research they should be digesting that information and then thinking about how it applies to their circumstances, and then telling us about how it applies to their circumstances in those words, rather than just giving us that information.